you need eggplant. Look at these beautiful eggplant. So to make a decent eggplant parm for a 13 by 9 pan, 3 layers, you need about four small guys, 2 to 3 really big ones. I have so many eggplant and it's so time consuming that I just process all of them and see what I can make. Usually this amount, like this amount could probably get me 4 layers in a 13 by 9. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw 2 extra in, and even if I get like maybe an 8 by 8 square separate, because what I do is I freeze it. So I bake everything off and then let them cool down, put them in the fridge overnight, and then I slice them up. The colder they are, the easier they are to cut up, and then I wrap them up tightly in plastic wrap and tin foil, put them in Ziploc bags, label them, and I have eggplant parm all winter long. And it is a great easy dinner because I pull them out the night before and then I heat them up in the oven covered and serve them up with some crusty bread for a cold winter night. So I've rinsed out my eggplant and I'm going to trim them up, trim the ends, and cut them up. Right by my cutting board, I've got salt, and I have a baking sheet lined with paper towels, and I have a giant roll of paper towels nearby because you're going to need a lot of paper towels for this. I salt my eggplant. So on my first layer of paper towels, I'm just going to sprinkle a light layer of salt. First eggplant. I'm going to trim the end. And I'm going to peel. Okay, I'm going to peel my eggplant. Usually I do this over the sink where my garbage disposal is. Just makes it a little easier, but all right, we have one layer pretty much started, right? We had salt on the bottom. Now we're going to gently salt the top, and you're just doing a light sprinkling. You don't have to go too crazy. And then you layer with paper towels. Salt this. And continue. You're going to continue to layer salt, until you're done with all of your eggplant, and then you're going to layer a paper towel on top. Why do you do this? You do this because it helps break down the cell wall of the eggplant. In doing that, when you fry them, they kind of absorb some of the oil. So yes, this is not the low-cal dish, people, but you know, it just ends up being a creamier texture for the eggplant. And it does kind of take the bitterness out, although these Japanese eggplant really aren't that bitter. Really, it's the process of breaking down the cell wall that makes, you know, this eggplant Parmesan version really nice and creamy and enjoyable to eat. I've done it both ways. I've also baked. I've done egg whites and baked them before putting them in an eggplant, and I'll tell you, it's just not as good. So it's worth the extra effort to do this. All right, those are our last few. Notice I just pat the paper towels down a little bit. You don't need to press them. They just need to sit quietly for an hour and a half. That's it. And then I'll take you to the next step. So honestly, though, this is really time consuming. You can, just set your timer and then go off and do other things. But yes, this eggplant parm is definitely, something that you work on all day periodically through your other chores. And it's definitely a weekend thing. But work now and you've got eggplant parm. You can prep it for the week, you can prep it for the year. They last up to a year in the freezer. So I'm gonna have this sit while I get some laundry done and some freelance work done. Okay, so our eggplant have been sitting for an hour and a half, and you can see this is really wet paper. I have it near the sink because we want to get some of that salt off, but we don't really want to put water back into the eggplant. We just want to kind of lightly get that salt off and then put them on a sheet with some more paper towels just to drip dry. So that's what we're going to be doing right now. So I've got my water on a trickle and I'm just quickly doing that. And placing them here to dry, because we're going to put an egg bat around them. So these have been like lightly rinsed, and I've put paper towels in between layers just to keep them padded dry. Ready to go. We're going to start our batter, and we need about 3 tablespoons of flour. And we're gonna need 6 eggs. This is just a really light egg batter. If you go online, if you look at lots of recipes, there's different variations of how to coat eggplant for eggplant parmesan. You can do egg batter and then dip in flour, and then panko. You could use panko in breading. This does not do breadcrumbs. This does not do panko. This is a really light egg coating, and it keeps the eggplant nice and light. So to this, I'm gonna crack out of the 6 egg. I'm just gonna start with 2. Just to get this flour incorporated. I do this so that the flour is not so lumpy if I just throw it in with all 6 eggs. Now I'm going to add the other 4. So to this, I'm going to add a tablespoon of dried parsley. With dried herbs, I like using my hands to crunch them up a little bit to release whatever oils are left in the herbs. Doing a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. A dash of ground pepper. And like just a little bit of salt. You know you've salted these eggplants, so I'm doing like a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And give it a good whisk. I should note this is my mother's recipe that she probably learned from her grandmother. So this is old school Italian right here. And 3/4 of Parmesan cheese. 1, 2, 3. And that's grated parm. You could do a blend like an Asiago parm if you want, give it a little bit more bite. I keep the whisk handy while I'm coating my eggplant because things settle to the bottom. So every few batches I mix before I coat the next batch. All right, I'm going to move over to the stove and show you kind of the assembly line that we're going to have for these eggplant. I've got everything kind of set up to go. My eggplant, my batter, close to my frying pan, which I've got on a medium-high heat. And then next to it, I have another baking sheet with clean paper towels, which I'm gonna drain once I fry up. I'm heating up my oil and I'm hearing some sizzling already. And what I like to do is grab a small piece, like a little guy like this. And give this a quick stir. And you just want to lightly coat and drain off the excess and pop this in. Now I start with a small one because obviously you can get a sense of like how hot this oil is. And when things are sizzling up, it's a little not hot, it's not hot enough. You can see I want things to really sizzle when I bring them in there. So once this gets going, then you know the oil's hot enough. So that's why I start with a little small piece, kind of a throwaway piece, if you will. You want things browning just a little faster. See, so once you see this batter kind of bubbling up and just starting to brown, that's when I know that this oil is hot enough to really get going now. So what I'm going to do is get going. So I'm going to dip this in, both sides. This is about the color that we're looking for here. Nice and golden and cooked through. I periodically, I pull them up to see if they need to be flipped. The ones that are already starting to get brown, these two in the middle, I flip. If things start browning too quickly and you can tell that the middles aren't getting cooked, that's when you have to actually lower your heat. So you do have to manage your heat as you go. And I'm going to move it to my paper towels to drain. And that's it. I'm going to continue on through all of my eggplant. You may find that maybe you run out of batter depending on how many you're making. You know, it's okay to crack another egg in there with a sprinkling of flour and Parmesan cheese just to like extend the batter to cover, you know, those last few. I've done that before. It's actually really easy. You just need a good big surface to work on. Put your eggplant over here. You got your mozzarella shredded cheese here. It's about just under a pound of shredded mozzarella. It's really more like, I don't know, like 3/4 of a pound. I could shred more if I need it. I have my fresh garden tomato sauce. You can use jar if you want. It's up to you. I have a lot of tomatoes. If you want to make your own tomato sauce for this eggplant parm, I do have another video in my Fridays with Flora series. It's fresh garden tomato sauce for eggplant parm. So be sure to check that out if you want to make your own and really have this be a full-on, you know, garden fresh eggplant parm. You can use jar sauce, no big deal. I also have a chunk of parm that I got from the farmer's market with a grater over here. So first things first, I've got a 13x9 pan. I'm also preheating my oven to 425. And I'm gonna take my sauce, and if you made it the day before, which is what I did, because it's a labor intensive, I'm gonna give it a stir, and I'm going to just lay a thin layer of sauce on the bottom. Now we're going to take our eggplant parm and decide what that first row is going to be. I think I'm going to go more lengthwise. That's what's nice about cutting the eggplant lengthwise, because it ends up being kind of like lasagna noodles a little bit. On top of this, I'm going to layer some sauce. And now I like to have a good layer of mozzarella sprinkled on top of that. And then I like to grate what probably equates to a tablespoon of some good grated parm. So that's your first layer. Now remember what direction you went in, because what I like to do is go zigzag, meaning I went lengthwise this way, so now on the second layer I'm going to go horizontally. So this is my top layer, and depending on what direction you went in, go the opposite on the next layer. So we ended up horizontally. And also I want to mention, if you have any extra eggplant parm, like fried eggplant, my mom used to make a really great grinder with extra eggplant. You can make a really great sandwich for lunch on a roll, put a little sauce on it, a little cheese, and run it through a toaster oven, and that is a really, really good lunch. Not low cal by any means, but still good. Okay. I'm going to top this off with sauce. So we're at the top now. And if you don't use up all your sauce, that's fine. You can always heat it up and serve it on the side to your guests when you serve up your eggplant parm. Some people like to have a lot of sauce. We've got a handful left of some mozzarella, which you're going to top. This top layer could be lighter than your middle layers. It's just the finishing touch. A little extra grated parm. All right, we're going to cover this with aluminum foil tightly. And now we're going to put this in the oven and cook it for about 30 minutes, and then uncover it and maybe put it up on a top rack just to brown the top for another 5. In it goes. It's been about 30 minutes. What I do at this point is, I'm going to show you kind of what's happening. You can see a lot of bubbling on the sides. And a lot of bubbling. That's what you're looking for. But we want to dry it out a little bit, and we want to brown the top. So I'm going to put it back in on the top rack for about 5 to 7 minutes more, uncovered. So in it goes. There we have it. So now we let it sit for about 10 minutes. You just kind of want it to set. You don't want to serve it up right out of the oven. It'll get all kind of mushy, and you want some nice good squares to cut out, so you're just going to cut some squares. And if you're going to store this in the freezer, I recommend covering it up once it cools, letting it sit in the fridge overnight, and then cutting it up the next day. It goes a lot easier. So that is eggplant parmesan. So thank you for joining me on this big endeavor. Well worth the work, trust me. Don't your garden eggplants deserve the effort? I know mine do. So have a great weekend. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and it helps support all the goings on here, and I really appreciate it. So thanks a lot. Have a great Friday. Bye.